Our next speaker is Emily Simone from Lockheed Martin, Changing the World, Employee Engagement and Workforce Impact. Emily.
Good morning. And I think true to George's vision, what you'll see here is some interesting intersection points as I look at it from a corporate perspective, and specifically through the perspective of one of the assets that we have, our people. And you'll start to see those points, and so it's very exciting to me what we'll be able to talk about later this morning. As Ken said, I'm going to talk about employee engagement and how we bring our people assets to the issues that we're trying to help solve. So we'll start talking a little bit broadly about how corporations look at this, because I know it's a mixed crowd and not everyone kind of lives and breathes it from our perspective every day. But when you look at companies and you look at how they try to tackle key social issues, at the end of the day, we're all businesses. And so we have to find that core issue or issues that is really part of what our business is, because it's going to become bringing, as you can see in the second one, or the third piece, all of our assets to the table. So if we're thinking about more than just cash, we're thinking about our people, our intellectual capital, you need to look at where we have those assets and find the intersections. And then you need to be very specific about it. So if you're looking at health and human services issues, that's broad. One company can't solve it. Together, we probably can't even solve it. But what specifically can we do with it? So is it tobacco cessation? Is it childhood obesity? Is it heart disease? You have to have a very laser-focused program. And then you bring your cash, your giving. You bring your people. You bring your executives. You bring your advocacy platform. And you bring all of the bear that these corporations have to it. But you can't do it alone, so you need some strong strategic partners. You need NGO partners. Increasingly, you need cross-sector collaboration, and that's sort of one of the bright spots that I think we really see emerging in this space. And you need internal champions. So for those of us who run corporate foundations or CSR programs, they're small teams. They're in the handfuls. And when you're trying to impact these issues, you need a whole army behind you. But you need them to be empowered. You need them to feel like they own it. And so how do you take it from just you in an office to the army that you have of your employees and have them be your champions, have them take it from you and have them own it? And then how do you measure it? So it's not just about showing your impact, but it's figuring out what are you doing and how do you continually make it better. So it sounds very broad, very abstract. I always find it best to kind of walk through a particular example. Obviously, the example I know best is Lockheed Martin, a global security company, 112,000 employees around the globe. For us, we focus on two issues. We focus on STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and math, and supporting our military and veteran community. If you know anything about Lockheed Martin, we're an innovation company. We're engineering at heart. And we need the full force of we need all the engineers we can to help us continue to design and innovate amazing technologies for the next 100 years. But if you also know anything about the STEM field, you know that the demand for jobs is higher than the number of people coming out of school. So half of our workforce are engineers or scientists, and we're looking to hire fast. But they're not coming out of colleges fast enough. You start to see some of these intersection points. And for us, with innovation, it's a key fundamental driver of our company. And innovation comes from the inclusion of all ideas, which means you need all people at the table. So it's also a diversity issue for us. The best way to grow that pipeline is to get more people in it who aren't. So that's girls, and that's the underserved community. So where are we focused? On the pipeline. So we're taking our employees, and we're looking at our workforce needs, and then we're going to marry our corporate assets. And that's how we're tackling it. Same thing on the military and veteran community. We've got 25% of our employees who are veterans. We're hiring about 1/3 of all new hires every year are veterans. Again, our service and products are deployed around the world for the US and our allies. And we have a set of folks who work for us who have that kindred spirit, either because they served or because what they do are out there saving lives and protecting freedom every day. So the same thing, how do we bring that mindset and that knowledge of what transitioning service members are going through, marry it with people who are in the corporate environment who have already made that transition, and enable it. So a few examples of how we do that, and I won't walk you through all of these, but these are some of our key partners in both of the spaces. And I'll just highlight a few. I'll start with the Girls Inc. Girls Inc. is an organization that's really out there to serve women, and specifically those who kind of don't have the same advantages, the information that Mike talked about. We have partnered with them, and we've created a brand new program where we take our women engineers and we serve them up as role models. We've got 56,000 potential role models, and if you study what drives people to go into STEM careers, it's because generally they have a role model. So if you come from a community where you don't have an engineer, you'll never think of it. It sounds boring. It sounds uninteresting, but it's really kind of creating tomorrow. So we take the women, and it's now being run out of our Women's Leadership Forum and our employee resource groups. This is now becoming their program. We started it, we've sort of innovated, we rolled up our sleeves with that group, we designed something from new, and now we're turning it over to our workforce to run. My hope is it's kind of a check from me every year, and everything else is handled by the employees. Similarly, American Corporate Partners are hiring our years, 2 groups focused on the veterans community. Same thing where we marry our employees who've gone through that transition and you become a mentor. So I'm a mentor to a lovely woman named Anna Kay up in New York who is currently in the reserves and trying to figure out what can I use from my military experience that's going to make me a better potential employer. And we spend lots of time talking about just that. And there are hundreds of people like me in the company who are doing that. First Robotics, where we get our employees out to serve as the champions and the leaders of these groups that put together robotics competitions. It's a wonderful organization. And all of this is then backed by data. So in the case of Girls Inc., we studied, we surveyed, we found what worked, and we found, more importantly, what we didn't work. And as we've iterated that program, we've made changes and adjustments. Engineers in the Classroom, a program where we get our engineers in the classroom through National Geographic, is actually out in the field right now with researchers, talking to teachers, talking to students, talking to our employees, finding out what works and what we need to improve on. So to me, this is fairly similar to what large companies do. So let's think more importantly about where we're headed, because that's what we're going to talk about this afternoon. I'll leave you with sort of 3 thoughts. One is the need for increased collaboration, both within corporations and across sectors. So why should I be creating a program that gets my engineers out? Why should I make that investment and then company B make that investment and company C make that investment? Wouldn't it be a lot smarter if we made it one investment and then we figured out how to bring all of our employees together, that we served up engineers of all different types, not just rocket scientists and mechanical engineers, but what about chemical engineers and the like? I think the same could be said for the work that groups like Lumina is doing. How do we work with the foundation world? How do we work with the nonprofit sector? So I think that is an area where you're beginning to see you're seeing it in the funding right now. I think the real difference makers in the funding world are the third-party brokers who are taking like-minded organizations and matching them. But what you haven't seen that has gone into the employee engagement. So a lot of work to be done in the funding arena for all of us who care about these issues. And then how do we take it from funding to all the assets of the corporation? Technology, we heard a little bit about this. For us, one of the largest challenges, 112,000 employees spread around the globe. How do I know what they care about, what they're passionate about, what their time availability is, and what their experience is? The power of technology to give me that information to harness and get my employees out is just breathtaking and gives us a lot of excitement and interest about where we could go. You can start to see the beginnings of it, but I truly think that that's going to be one of the game changers for companies. And then lastly, the changing role of volunteers, and specifically corporate volunteers. It is now a requirement that all nonprofits, if they want to have any kind of serious partnership, understand how to engage employees. But it's challenging. We have unrealistic expectations, and they probably have unrealistic expectations. We need to move past the days of painting the same fence every Sunday because a new corporation has called and said, I have 50 employees who need to be there at 4 o'clock, and they have an hour, and I could give them $50 for paint. How do you really begin to think from a nonprofit sector, what is it that I can do, and how can I do it in a way that it will actually work on their schedule and their timeline? The 9 to 5, they're busy 9 to 5, so what can you do around the edge? What can you do virtually is really going to take a dramatic shift for the nonprofits. So I think, as I end on the partnering for good, what we're so excited about is where we're headed, where our colleagues and other corporations are headed, but more importantly about the collaboration that's going to happen with all of you in the room and the further impact that we'll make.